Welcome, everyone. We are glad you are here joining us for iMSA faculty with Angel Chatterton. So come on in. As you are entering this webinar, feel free to drop your location or where you're chiming in from in the chat. We'd love to see where people are chiming in from. So don't be shy. Go ahead and put in where you're from.
That would be great.
Yes. We will get started here in a few minutes, but I just want to welcome everyone. Please come on in and let us know where you're coming from, where you're chiming in from. The Bay Area. Thank you, Tony. Minnesota.
Kelly from Minnesota. Portland, New York, Colorado, Vancouver. I'll be going there soon, Benjamin, but unfortunately I will only be there for a layover. I wish I could meet you in person. North Carolina.
I used to live in North Carolina, Matthew. Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point.
Marcus, we do have a lot in common. I used to live on the coast.
Oh,
live by Atlantic Beach.
Oh, Charlotte. I used to frequent Charlotte all the time.
Oh, I love it. This is great.
Yes. Thank you all. We'll get started here probably in about 30 seconds, but thank you. Thank you for joining us. If you have questions, you can scan this code that's on the screen with your phone, your iPhone or Google phone or what have you. It's to connect with our admissions team if you have questions. But I'm so excited. Typically, these webinars are conducted by folks like myself in admissions, but I am excited that we have an awesome faculty member, Angel Chatterton, here with us today. So you can get the real deal from a faculty member, and she's here to answer questions and to provide advice. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And so I'm going to just briefly go over the agenda. So Professor Chatterton will provide like a brief introduction of herself. And then I will actually just touch on Gies Online, just a quick overview of online programs, iMSA in particular. And then I will kind of touch on the curriculum and content. We'll go through the application process pretty briefly. And then towards the end, we'll open up for Q&A. So we have an hour with us. We're a fun group, and hopefully we can just have some good conversation throughout this time. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Professor Angel Chatterton.
Wow, that's a lot of small type there on things I've done. My goodness. Welcome, everybody. And it's a delight that you've joined our webinar tonight about our iMSA program. First of all, I don't know if you've ever been in an online program, but I believe ours is different. And let me just talk a little bit from my perspective while I introduce myself, why I think ours is different. And the reason why I think ours is different is because of faculty like myself. The reason why that's ours is different is because Gies provides both academically strong research faculty and practical faculty like myself. I come, as you can see, all of my background there, I have a strong banking background. And when I came on board with Gies in 2015, full-time as faculty, one of the things that I found just incredible about Gies is the fact that they regularly paired up deep research faculty, more academic track faculty, with the practical faculty that have had this practice deep experience. And I think that is what gives Gies one of the big differences in the market. So I just think that's something you should look at when you're considering an online program. Do they have that kind of balance in their program? So I'll just pick up some highlights. You can read all those different bullet points on there. I started out at RSM McGladrey. It was known as McGladrey Pullen back then, when in the auditing and taxation divisions, both of those. And then I quickly moved into banking. And in my banking career, I had the privilege of owning a bank and successfully sold that in 2014. We bought it at the height of the bank crash, which gave me a lot of perspective during that time. So you can see all the different things that I've done. And since I've been with Gies, I had the privilege of teaching both in our residency programs, in the undergraduate programs, as well as in our online space. And so it's been a delight to be with Gies. So Marcus, go ahead with your next slide, or what's next on the agenda.
Sure, sure. So just a little bit about Geese Business Online Program. So I just want to quickly just kind of give you kind of three pillars. So number one, the flexibility of our online programs. They're all 100% online, including our iMSA program. And then just some stackable options as well. I'll kind of touch on that on the next slide. In the future, we are looking at allowing our students potentially to go ahead and stack their iMSA degree into IMBA degree. So that's something that is in the works or what have you. Nothing confirmed at this time, but something that's looking to happen potentially in the future. Currently, we have our IMSM program that allows students to stack into the IMBA program. And it's online by design. So 2016, we started with our first graduate degree program. And so our programs were just put together because of the pandemic, right? And so we have such a strong infrastructure, not only from faculty and staff, but from a technology standpoint as well. Professor Chatterton, can you speak just kind of about, touch a little bit about the quality of the online MSA? Can you kind of talk about the comparison to like an in-person program, and how are the classes different?
Well, actually, I have a lot of experience in this because I just had a paper published on this topic. Myself and Professor Swartz published a paper regarding choosing your master's program, and we looked at both residency and online programs. And the quality of both our residency program and our online program, the quality is, I'm going to say, the same. And the reason why it's the same is they're both AACSB accredited. And when you look at your online program or your residency program, you should be looking at the accreditation that goes in behind that program. But since you're here and you're looking at an online program, you might be wondering about what is the quality behind that. So yes, it is AACSB accredited. But secondly, what kind of qualitative quality experience do you get? Well, you get to interact with professors live with us in live sessions. We also have this MOOC to support it. We also have live office hours, and I can go into depth a little bit more about that occurs on the weekends. Yes, on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And in all the classes that I've been involved in, those have been available along with some Thursday nights on some classes that I've taught in. And those are live to where you can ask questions and we're available. And so I think that adds to the quality. They are challenging classes. Most of the classes have group work. And so we expect you to have this rigorous case-based type of interaction. So you take not just book knowledge, but you're looking at cases and applying the knowledge that you learn to cases and solving them so you can apply it to what you're tackling in your careers. And so I think the quality is very high. So Marcus, I don't know, did I cover what needed to be covered there? But of course, I'm really passionate about it. But the quality is one where we go over regular cases in my classes with auditing. We'll discuss a fraud case that might recently have occurred. We regularly take them out of the news and we discuss how the law might apply or what signs have been seen or how we apply the auditing model to it. So we regularly apply it to what's going on in today's business.
That was great to hear. So basically, you're staying current what's happening out in industry and applying it to the classroom. So
Oh,
that's
we
great.
definitely are.
Oh, awesome, awesome. And then later on, we will have the opportunity to kind of dig into the curriculum a little bit. I know we had some questions about CPA exam
Sure.
and grad certificates and so forth. So yeah, we can definitely touch on that. And like I mentioned before, the stackable build. For some students, we try to reach you where you're at. some of you that's here today are looking to potentially go right into the iMSA program. Others may be a little hesitant, which is okay. There are ways that you can kind of prepare yourself to get into a full-fledged program, or you may not have the time commitment currently. You may just want to take one course. We do partner with Coursera to offer those massive open online courses or MOOCs. So students can take those courses, and then you can take the high engagement component for a credit course, and that course can be stacked into, if you wanted to go into a grad certificate, and that grad certificate can stack into an online degree program. And so have you, Professor Chatterton, encountered any students that kind of went this route as opposed to like a full-fledged degree program?
I've encountered students that have decided to convert their degree from a non-credit into a full credit. And they did want to, I would say, decide if this was for them, because they were a little uncertain if the online just modal of education was for them until they felt, I'm going to say, comfortable with it. And so I have encountered students that have come to my office hours and have shared their personal story. And once they got comfortable with it, and I don't know if they needed to gain confidence or just they had been out of the university setting since we've been more online, but they felt more comfortable with it, got confidence, and felt like they wanted to go for it. They enjoyed the flexibility, though. I can tell you that. I wish when I was younger, or younger in my career, I should say, that I had this ability. This is incredible.
Yes, and so not only will it save time, but it also save money. And so it's something to consider when you're looking at other programs. If you're taking a course for credit, or you may be doing a grad certificate, where those courses transfer over, right, into that degree program. So for example, if you're looking to potentially go into accounting foundations grad certificate, right, there's 12 credit hours. And so those 12 credit hours will transfer into the full-fledged iMSA degree program. So that's something to consider. Just a little bit of kind of quick facts I want to kind of touch on, just kind of showing the average cost, including tuition and fees. And so when you think about a program with the quality, with the breadth and depth that what we offer, is hard pressed to beat the quality of the program at this price point. And then students can complete it 18 months. You can extend it to 36 months. So basically just trying to fit right your fit, your needs, your pace. And we understand most of our students are working adults, and some of those have families and other obligations. And so there's some flexibility there. And then we offer 2 start dates, one in January and one in August. And so Professor Chatterton, I'm sure you know, connected with students that had other commitments and so forth. And how did you kind of engage with those students?
I would say the majority of our students are working adults with children. Um, it, it, we just it's Most of our students, we work with them. I think the program is very flexible with them. There is due dates. Under extenuating circumstances, of course, we work with students because, of course, there are things of that nature. But students are able to meet those deadlines. They're able to, sometimes attend class in person, sometimes they attend class recording wise, sometimes they attend it at their own pace. And also we have these office hours that are live, that are on the weekends, that we try to make flexible for your times that are available, usually on the weekends when most people are available. And we do try to stagger them given different time zones, because we are a global program. So sometimes we'll offer them a little later or a little earlier so that we encompass all our global time zones. So we do make it available for the working adult with children, the working adult with children that are in little league, soccer. There's been a number of times where we've had classes that are live where we can see children in the background that are sitting on mom and dad's laps, and that's fine. We understand you're working adults, and that's what happens. And I've had a number of younger mom, dad, or mom and their little children attend office hours, and that's fantastic. And so we really appreciate that.
Get them exposed early to college.
Exactly. Get them hungry for that knowledge.
Right. And so just one more slide about numbers, just kind of give you a kind of a background. So average age is 37, 10 years of experience, right? So we have some seasoned folks in the program, a range of different sectors and backgrounds and experiences. And like Professor Chatterton mentioned, it's a global program, right? So we have 35 countries represented, 46 states. And I can say this, I mean, I don't have a problem boasting about our faculty. They're awesome. As you hear in Professor Chatterton. So always been ranked one of the top faculty in the U.S. and so globally, and so we have some outstanding faculty members who are on the cutting edge and stay relevant to industry. So just wanted to share those numbers. Just a little bit about our curriculum, and so to earn your iMSA, you complete 32 credit hours, and 20 of those are core courses, and then 12 are credit elective courses as well. So Professor Chatterton, can you kind of give them an overview of how it's structured and in terms of the curriculum and so forth? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Typical issue there. Typical curriculum as far as the details of the class, or more holistically, Marcus, what do you want me to focus in on that?
Probably holistically, I would say.
Holistically? Okay, holistically, related to the classes that I've taught, and I guess you're fortunate here. I have taught auditing, I've taught data analytics, and I've taught managerial accounting, but I've taught managerial accounting on the MBA side. So auditing here and data analytics, I taught on the iMSA. Holistically, how these all fit together is auditing is one of your core classes, managerial accounting is one of your core classes. Auditing will come in the fall, and you'll need to take these holistically so that you can get your foundational ones, and then you choose an elective. Of course, I'm partial to data analytics. I think data analytics will help you do some data analysis. We have a whole series of courses with data analytics. The one that I'm teaching with Ron Guyman is using data analytics with Excel, and we use some Tableau. We do clustering, we do regressional analysis, and I think it complements auditing in managerial accounting really, really well. What other holistic things would you like me to comment on related to that?
I mean, I feel like you covered a good amount. I just learned something just from what you just mentioned. And so, no, that was a great kind of overview of it. And with that being said, just the degree is these are what the degree is for, right? So those students who want to take the CPA. And so correct me if I'm wrong, Professor Chatterton, but it allows students to reach the education requirements to be eligible to sit, right, for the CPA.
Yeah, in the majority of states and US territories, you're required to have 150 credit hours. You don't necessarily have to have a master's degree, but that can be the decision difference in getting that career-making job, getting at that C-suite that a lot of people are attaining to get to. I know that when I was breaking into the banking industry, that having my master's degree was and the CPA is what separated me from many of my job candidates. So I've always found both my CPA and my master's in accounting a difference maker. And I'm very grateful I took the time to conquer the CPA exam, and I'm going to say conquer my master's degree, because it was a good, rigorous challenge for me, but it's something I've never regretted, and I felt it was well invested dollars.
Great. We do have a question about courses. So one question is, will courses like accounting analytics Sounds like analytic, not accounting, be regarded as accounting coursework under AICPA exam requirement?
So the AICPA exam requirements, so they're changing a little bit. So I don't know who all has looked at the way the new CPA model is. They have the new core that they're doing, plus you can take I'm going to call it a supplement or a core, not a core, like my mind's kind of slipping me now, but like a internal controls or taxation, advanced taxation type of thing. But let me look at that question again, Marcus, to make sure I'm answering it. And I think there was
Okay.
one to begin with too. I need to make sure I answer. Um, is it going to be a requirement? I don't know if it's a full requirement, but applying the analytics and how you use it is going to be something that they're working towards. They haven't fully gotten there yet in the last AICPA workshop I was in, but they are getting towards that. I will tell you that.
Okay. Great. Great. And we will get through I know there's questions here, and so as we go through the presentation, we'll answer some of these questions that kind of align with the slide deck or what have you. But I do want to answer one question. Someone had a question about grad certificate credits can stack to the iMSA degree. Does it mean I can save time for credits when I actually start the degree program? Absolutely, yes. So if you, for like I mentioned before, if you are taking the accounting foundation grad certificate, there's two required courses for the grad certificates. I think accounting 501, accounting 502. Those are required for the grad degree program. So that's already two classes that will be under your belt. And then another elective course that you can take, those will be within the grad degree program as well. And so those classes will be already covered once you finish the grad certificate and that for that example, and then go right into the iMSA degree program. So yes. And so these are just two other ones, strategic thinkers or what have you, mid-level professionals. So like I mentioned before, just a range of professionals that are in the actual program. And so all of our online programs, IMBA, IMSA, IMSM, grad certificates. So our classes have two components. There's the Coursera component, which is kind of like the textbook, and then there's the high engagement. And so Professor Chatterton, can you talk a little bit about what does that Coursera component entail and how can students take advantage of that part of the class?
So in all my courses that I've taught in the online programs, the Coursera component is your foundational component for the course. And you will be assigned a Coursera component for that week or that module, depending upon how the course is designed. And you should complete the Coursera component ideally before you come to what we call the high engagement portion of the class. Realistically, your schedule with the soccer and your work deadlines may not allow you to do that. But ideally, that's what we would like you to do because it's your foundational material. Then when you come to the high engagement portion, it builds upon this Coursera content, and we are taking that foundational material and applying it to a case we discuss in class, or we have a group where we break it apart and we're applying it at a more complex level. And so it's your foundational component in the class. The high engagement takes the Coursera component and makes it more rigorous. And so here we have the high engagement portion.
Yes, yes. And can you kind of touch on, part of a high engagement is like a live class
Oh, it
component.
is.
Yes. Do you mind just kind of briefly describing what that entails?
Well, it depends on, and so in all three classes that I've taught in the online program, they all have a different vibe. I just got done teaching this spring with two other professors in the MBA side of the house. We were teaching managerial accounting, and in that class, we would go over our cases. We would go over, for example, Disney analysts just recently went and used managerial accounting during COVID to try to figure out which parks they were going to kind of shut down, and how they were going to pivot from that. And so we were using some of the press news coverage to talk about how managerial accounting was impacting the world today. And then we were doing, we had some students present from all over the world in their groups, their results of the cases and how they interpreted it, because there was no one solution to our case, because there was different cultural impacts and how they calculated the numbers, which you're going to say, really? Yes, in managerial accounting, you can take different methodologies, which makes it so interesting. In Ron Guyman's class, for example, with data analytics, you might use a clustering analysis model or a regression analysis, and you're going to make a recommendation. In this particular class, we were looking at this business, and you're supposed to come to a conclusion on how would you change the business model? Would you recommend opening or closing, shifting when they do their sales? Would you recommend dropping a product line? So you're using these different types of data analytic tools, whether it's visualization, clustering models, data regression, logit tools, whatever it might be, to make some recommendations. And in auditing, Professor Peacher and I usually have some sort of case. Sometimes it's auditing fraud, sometimes it's changes under US GAAP, or US gas as applied to US GAAP, because there's some very interesting things going on in the Securities and Exchange. There's been recently an announcement about climate change and how not necessarily auditors, but auditing standards that are potentially being proposed. They're not quite auditing standards on how we're going to audit climate change and climate effects, specifically related to the environmental part of that. And so we're looking at standards that are hitting today's rules under the PCAOB, looking at what specifically what the SEC is proposing and how that might impact our standards of our industry. And so we will propose to our class a discussion. And so we'll break into breakout groups and have a very pros and cons, and how does that affect our industry today? What is it going to do to the standard makers? And what does that do to white papers and people proposing? So it's a very lively discussion. And that's what happens in those three examples that I can give you.
I think that separates our program from a lot of other programs out there. This high engagement component, where it allows you to also do team or group projects. I know there was a question about that. I think you were answering inside. So it's up to you, Professor Chatterton, if you want to answer that live, that question in regards to group work, that's totally fine.
Yeah, let me go ahead and answer that question, because I think a lot of students have this question, and I'm going to go ahead and read it. It says, in general, how much group work is included for each course? I could envision difficulty coordinating schedules if the groups are too big, mixed of East Coast, West Coast people. Well, that is a valid question. Here's what we do to accommodate that. And it's not just East Coast, West Coast. It could be Germany. It could be Indonesia. It could be China. It could be India. It could be Africa, because we have students all over the world. So we do try to, so when you enroll here, make sure you answer within the first 5 days of getting onto your class, the time you're available. Because we do try to, or it would be the program, we try to align with the times you're available. And you may be aligned with somebody that is in China, or that is in Germany, or that is in Australia. Instead of looking at, I am trying to only be aligned with somebody that's just like me, one of the richness of our program is the networking. And you get to work with somebody that is outside your normal work zone. And I can tell you from my son's personal work schedule, he regularly works. He's based in Pennsylvania. He regularly works with people in London, Singapore, and Arizona. And so working across time zones and globalness is very important. And that's his job. And so we try to simulate as much as possible those type of conditions so that you're practicing those types of things, yet we're respecting by trying to respect when your availability is. So it is important to submit that on a timely basis so that we're aware of when you are available. So we do try to make sure we respect when you're available.
That's great. And so I have a quick question. In terms of the peer-driven discussion and tutoring, um, can you talk a little bit about that? 'Cause I know that's an area that I think a lot of people are surprised to hear in an online program. So do you mind touching on that for me?
Actually, I'm actually pretty familiar with this because it's kind of goes in with my faculty office hours. Two points of this. I can't think of what's the platform, Marcus, that everybody uses that faculty's not allowed to go into?
Oh, workplace?
Workplace.
Yes.
We are not allowed to go into workplace, but that's where a lot of peers meet. Faculty is NO, we're not allowed to go in there. But I can tell you one of the reasons why you should come into office hours, even if you have no question at all. Number one, to absorb the material, but number two is to meet up with other peers in your course so that you can meet in workplace later to have peer-driven discussions and tutoring. Many times we have peer-led tutoring sessions that occur outside of faculty office hours. And one time I can specifically remember this, I had two just star students that came to my faculty office hours that had gotten in this big discussion about this related to this SEC ruling that well, this SEC discussion, and they had two diverging opinions about it. And so we went to what the PCAOB, which is the current standards for auditing right now is for publicly traded companies that haven't ruled on anything related to climate change and just applied what their framework is to what their question is and came to a resolution. But what I liked about their lovely and lively discussion is they're using critical thinking skills. They're trying to be the decision makers of today, applying their skills they're learning in class so that they can get a seat at the table, whether that's, trying to, get on some boards of directors, get to the CFO seat. And one of those people I just mentioned has successfully got a job as a CFO and has followed up with me. So that's what I like about this peer-driven discussion and tutoring. It challenges you. This is not your I don't mean to sound slang, but this isn't your mama's graduate degree. This isn't something from 20 years ago. This is if you're looking for, I want to be challenged, I want to make a difference. To me, this is the graduate degree for you.
Great. You hit it on the nose right there. And it kind of brings it back to actually as a question from our previous slide. Um, we had a student that had a question about Coursera. If I have done Coursera courses, then to what extent will I get credit? Can you kind of explain that, to me, the credit piece of that?
Well, I can't I I believe, and I'm not for sure. I think if you've passed our Coursera courses related to the ones that correspond to auditing, like if you've taken Professor Peacher's auditing course, I believe you should get credit for that portion of the course related to our auditing class. I'd have to double check what the time frame is on that, Marcus, but I believe that that is true.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. And then lastly, how would you say students are like evaluated during their time in the courses?
I actually, don't laugh, I did my homework before this class and I have my notes here. So I just took from all three classes that I've been a part of, auditing, for example. I don't want anybody to be afraid of group work. Um, it's not that people haven't had bad experiences, but for the most part, people that have been enrolled in the classes that I've had experiences have had good experiences. But I don't want to say that everybody's had a lovely experience. But for the most part, everybody I've dealt with has had a good experience. Because quite a bit, like for example, in 503 auditing Part A, because there's a Part A and a Part B, about 20% of it's group work. And for example, in Part A, what we're doing is we're looking at the foundations of auditing. So therefore, we're having you look at the standards. And so you should be looking at the standards. You would want to look at the standards. You want to be standard makers. And so if you don't like the standards, you want to know how to go to the standards and how to change them and who you need to write to, because you want to be equipped with that knowledge. So that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be looking at some of the current standards in place and writing on that, on what you would arm yourself to change it or to keep it in place. And then we also have you writing some good old fashioned quiz questions on arming yourself with that knowledge too. And so that's part of that. In part B, we step up that knowledge. You get into a little bit more into the, I'm going to call it the art of auditing. And we actually have your group. And again, that's at 20, it's about 25%. So it's increased from 20% to 25%. And you're actually doing auditing. We've got this great we use Minecraft in my particular class. Yes, I said Minecraft. Get your 7-year-old out to show you how to use Minecraft, but we use Minecraft to actually do some auditing. And so we use that to actually test auditing. Aside from this group work, what do we have? We have, of course, what we call mini tests, but they're like little mini quizzes to assess your knowledge of the high engagement portion of it. And we have a final exam as well, of course. In Ron Guyman's class, which is the data analytics that I've been a part of, we actually have you use Excel and do some data analytics and use Tableau as well. We'll be doing cluster analysis. We'll be doing some VBA. We'll be doing some regression. We'll be doing some logic. And so a lot of questions I get in my office hours is, I can't get this darn formula to work, and that's okay. It's important to practice those sometimes basic and sometimes advanced Excel skills that are so helpful. And then looking at the output to say, well, what is this telling me? Is this telling me a story? Do I need to advise this client differently? And so that's important. In managerial accounting, again, I can't speak to the accounting side of it, but from the MBA side of it, in accounting, the accounting side, I imagine, is a little bit more in depth than the MBA side. I think they make you get a little bit more hands-on with the journal entry part of it. But in the 503 side, which is managerial accounting, we look at activity-based costing. We'll look at cases on it. We'll look at, different decisions you could make. We look at, of course, break-even point cost analysis, decisions on, do I make this product or that product if I only have so much resources? And we all know we're living in a world right now where we're either short on supplies or we're short on labor. And so those concepts are so important in today's society that we live in. And so those are the kind of things we're doing. But we do have group work. And what's interesting about group work is there's always different opinions. And it's very interesting to see the resolution to those opinions. And those are very helpful.
Well, thank you. That was a lot of great information. So with that being said, we talked a lot about the curriculum and what happens in the classroom, evaluation and so forth. And like I mentioned earlier, and Professor Chatterton mentioned this, I mean, we have, global reach. And so for all of our Gies online programs total, there's about a little bit over 6,000 students between our degree programs, certificates. And so it's a strong alumni network as well. And so with the strong alumni network, there's definitely opportunity to network. Professor Chatterton mentioned networking like through group projects and group work. But there's various ways that our students can network in this virtual environment. I think that's another benefit of our program, right? And so some are Gies led, some are student led. Professor Chatterton, have you been a part of any of these networking opportunities where you're connecting with current learners and potentially alumni?
Yes, I've been a part of iConverge. That is an incredible, and that is an in-person opportunity for you to come to campus. Um, I will not miss that. That is insane and wonderful. But one thing that I don't think you realize is the power of the Illinois network and the Gies network in particular. I've had students email me, I've had students come to my office hours, and I'll just connect them to other students, or they'll talk to other students on Workplace. And what's important about that is they'll know of a job opening, and I'll say, well, this other student in this other class was a good fit. And there's just been a lot of connections to further your career. And I think people doubt the power of the networking online that you really get. I did have one student that ended up with an internship at the SEC. I keep mentioning the SEC, but through this program, and it was so powerful. I had another student that's going to be working in the DC area. He got an internship at a non-traditional age, I would say, and now he's working for Deloitte. And he said it's the power of the network, it's the power of the Gies degree. And he just sent me a thank you the other day, connecting him with some students. Now, I didn't do the work. All I did was make an introduction. And he, on his part, he has connected with other students, and he's just passing on his connections as well, because he's almost like a little ambassador for us. I am his positivity is incredible. So I can't, I'm a big believer in this. I just truly believe that there's just a big power in this network.
100% agreed. I attended iConverge as well, and it was just great just to connect with the current learners. And iConverge is also open to alumni. So we had alumni who came back to also just engage on campus. So definitely a great way to network with your peers. And then, I mean, we have such an active student population for our 3 degree programs. Students will, uh, you know, create meetups in these different locations throughout the US and globally. And so I hear stories where students are traveling to a location, for example, in another country, and there's a learner in that country who's like, hey, let's meet up somewhere. And so that happens quite often. Um, and so if you're looking to be part of a program where you want to be engaged with your learners, obviously virtually, but also in person, there's definitely opportunities for that to happen in iMSA programs. So just wanted to share that. Another I feel like benefit is just our student academic success team. So being able to provide support, right? So you have faculty that provide support. You have your peers in the classroom that may provide support, but we also have professional advisors that will guide you through the process. And as you can see on the screen, there's ways you can connect with the team, one-on-one appointments, email support, express advising if you just have a quick question. But the one-on-one appointments is pretty critical, because if you need to sit down for 30 minutes virtually, right, you can set up an appointment with an advisor. And so any tips that you have, Professor Chatterton, in terms of, how a student can be successful in an iMSA program?
I think, first of all, come prepared, come. I have a lot of students that come in with this attitude that they have to be perfect. I don't want you to come in with this perfect attitude, um, because the fact that life is going to happen. The program's designed around life. And so some weeks you're not going to be able to see my shiny, happy face in live engagement, live session. And that's okay. And realize that that's okay. And we realize that that is okay. But on those weeks, do try to attend office hours, even if you don't have question one and for some reason you haven't cracked open the book. Is that my real desire that you do that? No. But why should you do that? Because you're going to learn from that. You can try to catch up and catch up on the weekends. Ideally, the success is to be, set aside time, block out that, block out those times, plan it accordingly. But I don't want you to have this, it's all or nothing, because it isn't all or nothing. I've just ran into that with a few students. I had this all or nothing attitude. It's not all or nothing. Obviously plan for success, because if you don't plan for success, have that mapped out, you're not going to reach the moon. But in the meantime, be realistic, be forgiving of yourself, come in with a learning attitude, not a perfectionist attitude. Um, have your end goal. If you don't have an exact end goal, like, I'm going to be CFO, that's okay. Come in with what your goal is that you want to get out of this, because this degree is so powerful and the knowledge you can gain from this is so powerful. Don't be afraid to speak up. If there's something you're not understanding, let's clarify it. Some of the terms are unique and unusual, especially in my auditing class. Let's just face it. If some of you have already looked at some of the auditing material, you might say, I have no idea what that word is. Auditing's a whole different language. If English is your second language, auditing will be your third language. That's okay. So open attitude, open mind, be forgiving of yourself, aim for success, apply your schedule as you're going to be be successful, but don't shoot for perfection. Aim for success, not perfection. To me, that is the ideal student, looking for that knowledge, seeking that knowledge. Attend office hours.
Can't stress that enough. 10 office hours, definitely. All right, so we covered a lot today, just about the program, the curriculum, and the ways you can network. I just want to touch just briefly on the application requirements. The application is open. The deadline has, we had a question about the deadline and scholarships. So that deadline passed, that was June 1st. But students have until July 6th to apply if you want to start in the fall of this year. And so we look for a resume. And so we require a resume actually. And so it doesn't have to be a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 page resume, even if with extensive work history, maybe a page or two, just kind of highlighting, the highlights of your work experience, and just making sure that it aligns what you put on the application. That's what's key, to be honest. So making sure that those two align. We look at your academic history. So our graduate college requires a 3.0 GPA. We need all transcripts. When you're applying, you can submit unofficial transcripts. If you become admitted to our program, we will require official transcripts. And so make sure those mark sheets, are in English as well. So that's one thing I definitely wanted to point out. If if your schooling was in a country other than the U.S. And then personal statement is required as well. What can you bring to the program? This is your time to kind of shine in writing. And then, talk a little bit about, your experience and, what do you know about the program? It kind of tells us you're doing a little bit of research and have a little bit of understanding of what you're getting into. There's an optional essay. And so if you're a student who did not meet the 3.0 GPA requirement, there could be a very valid reason. And so the optional essay provides you the opportunity to kind of explain the reasoning behind not meeting that 3.0 GPA threshold. We do require 2 professional letters of recommendation. And so, hopefully those will be from a direct supervisor, right? Can attest to your work ability, ethics, or what have you, and or a professor as well. And so for our international students, there are some requirements in regards to testing as listed on the screen, like TOEFL, for example. And so there's some score that you have to meet in order to be admitted into the program. There's a waiver essay. And so if you, and towards the end of this presentation, I'll provide a link to that page. There's a lot of information there. And it kind of outlines what would be considered a waiver for the English requirement. And so I include that. And the GRE, GMAT, they're optional. So meaning like if you don't want to submit those scores, you don't have to. But if you feel like you did quite well on those exams, then you can submit those scores, and that'll be another data point we can use within the admission process. So we do holistic admission. So we consider all these requirements when we review your application. So just wanted to break that down for you. And then any questions, just let me know in the chat or what have you, or in the Q&A, and I can answer those. And then within the application review, so after you submit, we will review your application, make sure we have all required materials. And then once the materials are complete, we will go ahead and reach out and have you do an interview. And the interview is probably one of the best parts of my job because I'm not answering the question, I'm actually asking the question. But it's just a great way for us to really engage with you virtually. And so I love just meeting students from all over the world, just get to know them a little bit. It's about a 15 to 20-minute interview. In some sense, it's we try to have a conversation, really try to get to know you. How are you engaging virtually, right? Telling us a little bit about, your work history, similar to what you're putting on your in your essay, your application. And so this is a great way to shine, and not be afraid to talk about, why you will be a good fit for the program, and providing, in-depth understanding of the iMSA program or what have you. And so that's kind of like the last part of the whole application review process. And then once you complete the interview, you will hear back from us 1 to 2 weeks after with an admission decision. So that's pretty much the review process. So we try not to hold your application for months. We try to get those decisions out as soon as possible. And like I mentioned before, final deadline is July 6th to receive full consideration. So you have a couple of weeks to get it in if you're still interested in an iMSA program. I think we have about 6 minutes left. And so again, if you wanted to scan this QR code, it will go to our admission team and someone will respond to you within 24 to 48 hours. You can always connect with our office as well. I'm going to stop sharing. And so let's see, I think we have 2 questions. I think I answered the one in regards to the scholarship. The next application, that will not open up probably until like October for spring 24. And so, plenty of time for that. And then Professor Chatterton, do you have any advice in regards to training for entrepreneurship? I know you teach an IMBA course program as well. So.
Well, I saw Benjamin's question there, and it depends on how deep you want to get into your numbers. And of course, the accounting course, this master's will allow you to understand your numbers very much so. My next door neighbor, I'll just give you a quick example. My next door neighbor opened up her own business, and she struggles right now. Her business has grown from 0 to I don't know, it's probably a couple million now. And so she's struggling with working with her accountant right now because she doesn't quite understand what some of the numbers mean. So I've encouraged her to, I translate the numbers quite often for her. And then we have a translation issue between her tax return. She's an LLC, which I won't go into what that is, and her GAAP basis accounting. So to answer your long-winded question is an iMSA or master's degree in accounting would help you understand your numbers more. And your numbers are very critical to an entrepreneur, especially cash flow. If you feel like you have a good understanding of those numbers without your accounting degree, then maybe an MBA is fine for you. But if you don't have an understanding of your numbers, especially your cash flow, I can guarantee you your business will not be successful. So hopefully, Benjamin, that gives you an idea of what you need to know to be successful with your endeavors.
Thank you, Professor Chatterton. And I think we had a question in regards to English test scores. I put the link in the chat. So for full admission, um, you have to hit a certain score. And so if you go above that score, that is great. That's one requirement you met, but we still would look at the other factors within your application as well. There are also, limited status admission, meaning that if you fall below the full admission minimum score requirement, you could be admitted within the program under what we call the performance admission base track. And so you would take one course at a time, like 3 different courses. You hit a certain GPA, and if you hit those benchmarks, then you will be admitted directly into the full program. You won't lose any time because you're still taking the same classes, but you're just taking one at a time.
As you can see, we are definitely we want to make sure you're learning from the material, applying the material to what your endeavors may be. Maybe you're wanting to pivot your career. Maybe you're wanting to create your own career, as in Benjamin wants to be an entrepreneur here. He's alluded to that in his chat post. Or maybe you're wanting to move up to the C-suite, or maybe you're in the C-suite and maybe you want to move to a different type of position at another C-suite. But we want to make sure that you're in a successful position, and we want to make sure you are learning and applying from this material. That's why I'm always encouraging people to come to my office hours. It's not what you think of as office hours, or at least my office hours. Although we can discuss the material discussed in class, we also end up having students network, learn from each other, do that peer learning, and we usually end up talking about other things that we use from class, applying to real career situations. Sometimes I get a hypothetical, well, what if this happened in my work situation, Professor Chatterton? And so we'll have a holistic discussion about how the topics we discuss in class may be resolved, or how would we handle that. And so we have a pretty robust discussion about it.
I have one question about the financial accounting course. So the prereq includes one business management course at the undergrad level, and then a sequence, one of 2 financial accounting courses. And so you need those 2 as prereqs. I can't say right now that that financial accounting class you mentioned we will have to review that particular course. But yes, you need one of 2 financial accounting course and a business management course in terms of prereqs. And then do you want to answer the last one in regards to age?
Let me see if I can.
So the average age for the program is 37. Do you think the program is still a great choice for a 24-year-old?
I've had students in my class ranging from 22 to 72. One of the things I think as a younger person enrolled in this, I think it's fine. You may find it intriguing that there's all sorts of people with all sorts of experiences. And so I don't want you to be intimidated. And I don't want to use that word. That's not a word I like to use very often. But I found some of the younger people may, if you don't embrace it, what you shouldn't do is embrace the people that you're paired up with. And I don't say paired, there's more than 2 people in a group, but you're grouped with. You should just be a sponge as a younger person and learn from their experiences. So as a 24-year-old person with maybe less job experience or less career experience, you should be a sponge and learn from your peers. Don't be intimidated by the fact that they, again, I don't want to use that in a bad sense, but don't be intimidated that they have 10 years of experience. You should be able to add value. Maybe you come in with a different set of skills because you've just gotten out of your undergrad sooner. So you've got an advantage over your older peers that they may not have, but they have an experience that you haven't experienced. So I wouldn't be intimidated by that. But I've just noticed some students are a little like, oh, these people have 10 years of experience. Don't look at it as a bad thing. Look at it as an awesome thing. It's a great way to network. They can open doors for you too. So I would embrace the opportunity. If you're up for it, I would say do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Professor Chatterton. A lot of great information, and thank you all for being here and asking questions. Actually, a lot of great questions. So we really appreciate it. Thank you, and you all enjoy the rest of the time. If you're in the morning or evening or afternoon, wherever you're located, thank you again for attending. Take care.